Om Shanti, Happy Janmashtami or Gokulashtami. This Janmashtami, birthday of Sri Krishna, is a very special occasion for Hindus because it is the only occasion where we consider the deity Krishna to be a child and nurture him as if we do our own child. When we heard the term Janmashtami, we are reminded of three things. First, they will draw the baby foot of Sri Krishna on the floor, and secondly, if there's a child in our family, then we will dress that child as Sri Krishna. And thirdly, there's a great celebration called Dahi Handi, where they break the pot of butter that is tied at a greater height. This Dahi Handi is celebrated in remembrance of the incident in Mahabharata where Sri Krishna as a child is portrayed as someone who steals butters from his neighbors. So to protect butter from Sri Krishna, Krishna's mother asked her neighbors to tie the pot of butter at a greater height so that he couldn't reach it. But Sri Krishna makes his friends form a human pyramid and climbs on the top of it to get the butter from the pot. First, we need to ask ourselves that if somebody has the behavior of stealing anything, including butter, will we worship him? But we worship him a great deal. So it obviously means that stealing doesn't represent the actual stealing, but it represents something deeply spiritual. To answer that, we must first understand who Krishna truly was to deserve such a huge celebration. So, do you know why Christians celebrate Christmas similar to that of Krishna Jayanti or Janmashtami by having baby Jesus? Because as everybody knows, it is through him Christianity came into being, which means he is the first Christian soul. So obviously he is very special to that religion. That is why they celebrate his birthday a great deal. Likewise, for Hindus, Sri Krishna is the first baby that was born into Hinduism. Actually, that was not Hinduism during that time. It was called Adi Sanatan Devi Devada Dharam, which means the first religion and the eternal religion that lasts forever, and it is the religion of the deities. So this world was originally created as heaven by God 5000 years back, and Sri Krishna was the first child to be born in heaven. The heaven, as the name suggests, is very pure and filled with everything: wealth, health, peacefulness, blissfulness, everything is filled there. So Sri Krishna is the first child to enjoy the full wealth of heaven. That is why Sri Krishna is not famous only among Hindus but also among all religions, because heaven is the ultimate aim for all religions, and Sri Krishna rules heaven. So he is the first prince. So what is the need for him to steal butter or anything? So this proves that whatever was mentioned in Mahabharata was just a story and it did not happen for real. As a matter of fact, all religious scriptures were not the true historic stories. But of course, there are deep spiritual truths hidden in them. But it is a form of story, not the real facts. No war ever took place in heaven as mentioned in Mahabharata and Ramayana. If the war happened there, then what's the point of all religions to have the aim of reaching heaven? Because there is enough war here. So why should we go to heaven and also engage in war there? So the butter that was shown to have stolen by Sri Krishna was not in fact the actual physical butter, but it is a symbolic representation of heaven. So the aim of reaching heaven is so high that they portray the butter pot tied at a greater height. So Sri Krishna cannot reach that height without the support of his friends as per the scripture. Likewise, Sri Krishna did not become the ruler of heaven without the support of anybody. Actually, the greater deeds he performed in his previous birth was the actual reason for him to claim that highest post in heaven. So, unlike the religious beliefs in Christianity and Islam, the world was not created out of nowhere. The world exists all the time. But what happened was, the world before heaven was hell. The same world which was heaven in the beginning is now hell. How do you call this a hell? We see all sorts of things that causes pain and sorrow for everybody, every living organisms on earth. But that was not the case in heaven. In heaven, even the newborn baby, while taking birth, will be smiling instead of crying as it does now. The reason for that is there is absolutely no sin in heaven. Actually, they don't know what sin is. They don't know what lust is. They don't know what anger, greed, attachment, and ego is. The reason for that is, unlike us, they were soul conscious, but we are body conscious, which means we consider ourselves to be this perishable body, but the deities that inhabited heaven, they considered themselves to be the imperishable soul that operates this body. So the soul controls this body. The soul sees through eyes, speaks through mouth, listens through ears. Nonetheless, it is not part of the body. It is distinct from the body. The deities were aware of this constantly, and that is the reason they were happy constantly, because they were always conscious of the fact that they were souls. So they were focused on themselves, which means they were focused on the soul. So even while interacting with others, they would consider the other to be the soul that sees through the eyes, speaks through the mouth, so that they don't get attracted towards the physical beauty. Of course, they were very beautiful. As a matter of fact, this is a 5,000-year time cycle, and Sri Krishna is the number one beautiful man who ever lived in this 5000-year time cycle. So not only Sri Krishna, everybody who lived there would be very beautiful, and among them the number one handsome guy is Sri Krishna. And that is the reason why every single girl wants to have a handsome husband like Sri Krishna, a beautiful child like Sri Krishna. So all the deities as well as Sri Krishna were not only beautiful externally but also internally. They were filled with divine characters like love, peace, blissfulness and purity. That is the reason Sri Krishna is always shown with a peacock feather in his crown, where peacock represents purity. And the residents of heaven were so rich that their houses were built out of golden bricks. Since they were all soul conscious, they were eternally happy, because their happiness did not depend on anything external to them, but it depended purely on themselves, on the soul. They were constantly aware of the soul that is imperishable. So their happiness was also imperishable. So everything was going fine for the first 2500 years when this world continued to be heaven. By world, I mean India, because India was the only continent that existed in heaven. And that is the reason why Hindus worship 33 million deities, because they were the residents of Bharat when Bharat or India was heaven. So the reason people draw the baby foot of Sri Krishna is, if Sri Krishna enters our home, which will never happen in hell, it will happen only in Satyug, heaven. So if he keeps his feet in our home, it means already we are in heaven. So that's the main reason we draw his foot in our home. So we want Sri Krishna to take birth in our home so that the whole world becomes heaven. But how did he take birth as Sri Krishna, the number one resident of heaven? By putting effort in his previous birth in Kali Yuga. We are in Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, just before the destruction of Kali Yuga, God comes 100 years before the end of the world. He enters an old man's body and he names him Brahma, and he gives this knowledge through the Brahma's mouth. This knowledge is available absolutely free of cost in all Brahma Kumaris Raja Yoga meditation centers in the name of Murli. So God enters Brahma's mouth and gives this knowledge about how this world was heaven and how Brahma was originally Sri Krishna 5000 years back. Yes, it is the Krishna's soul after taking several rebirths. In his final birth, after God entered him, names him Brahma. And he says to Brahma that we have lost everything that God provided us in heaven by becoming body conscious in hell, thereby becoming addicted to sensual pleasures and 5 vices like lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. It is because we fall prey to these 5 vices that we commit more and more sins, because of which we lose health, wealth, peacefulness, blissfulness gradually. So by the time we reach the end of Kali Yuga, it is as if we have lost all the treasures God gave us in the beginning. So in order for us to regain everything that we have lost for the past 5,000 years, God gives this knowledge and enables us to become soul conscious again. But we couldn't retain soul consciousness for more than a minute because our souls have become so weak due to its addiction to worldly pleasures. So that is why God says that we should consider ourselves to be the souls and then connect our mind to God Shiva, who is also a soul that resides in the soul world. Actually, we souls originally resided there before taking birth in heaven. And also after the destruction of hell, which is Kali Yuga now, we will still be leaving this body and we souls go back to the soul world. So the only difference between God and all the other souls is we enter this birth and death cycle by taking several rebirths, while God stays away from this birth and death cycle. The only reason He takes an old man's body in the end is to give this knowledge so that help us come out of all the pain and sorrow that we receive as a punishment for our past sins. How do we do that? So God teaches us to become soul conscious again by remembering God as much as possible, so that the more you remember God as a point of light in the golden red colored sky, our souls become pure and purer. Not only it is enough to remember God as a point of light, but also we need to listen to God's teachings called Murli daily. So we need to listen Murli daily and we need to constantly remember important points from Murli throughout the days so that our mind is so occupied with the knowledge points of God so that we don't give the opportunity for the mind to wander around towards worldly attractions. Thereby, we'll be able to regain the control over our mind. It is because we have lost total control over our mind for the past 2500 years that we start committing more and more sins, thereby losing all the treasures God originally provided us with in the beginning. Although God gives this knowledge through the mouth of Brahma, He is not giving only to Brahma but to the whole humanity, because only humans can understand the knowledge. God has to take a human form, which is why He enters the Brahma's body. So those who listen to the direct teachings of God through Brahma's mouth become sons and daughters of Brahma, who are called Brahma Kumars and Brahma Kumaris. So after taking this knowledge from God, we won't keep that to ourselves but spread that to our friends and relatives or whoever we come in contact with. And we also go to temples and schools and colleges and give this knowledge so that we make people aware of the fact that God Himself has come to give this knowledge and to purify us and to make us back into deities again. So that we all, after taking this knowledge, make enough effort to make ourselves worthy to enter heaven. Because not only Sri Krishna is going to reside there. Of course, there would be many other deities. So he is the king. So obviously he needs subjects to rule over, right? So that is the reason we give this knowledge to everybody, and based on the effort of making ourselves pure and making others pure, one is given this suitable status in heaven. It is because Brahma has put 100% of his health, wealth, and mind into the service of spreading this God's knowledge to everybody, that he becomes number one in heaven. That is, he takes birth as Sri Krishna. So it is with the cooperation of many other Brahma Kumars and Brahma Kumaris, Brahma succeeds in becoming Sri Krishna. So he needs cooperation from other souls as well to claim the number one status. So that is represented by the story of Sri Krishna in Mahabharata, that he seeks the cooperation of his friends to steal the butter. So the essence of this knowledge is to become soul conscious again. So if we become soul conscious, we will again be filled with the divine qualities that we originally possessed in the beginning of heaven. So our eyes become as pure, our words become as sweet, and our attitude will be so pure and loving. So such level of soul consciousness is achieved by practicing soul consciousness, and also by remembering God as much as possible, and also by churning the Murli points, the knowledge points directly given by God throughout the day. So that's how the knowledge points become seated so deeply in our mind that all the other vices that we have been addicted to for the past 2500 years slowly gets removed from our mind. In heaven, not only humans but even animals love each other, which is why in all religious scriptures it is mentioned that cow and lion take water from the same pond at the same time in heaven, which means they don't hurt each other. They feed on plants, not on other animals like they do in hell now. So in order for us to be able to enter heaven, we need to imbibe all the divine qualities that we've originally possessed in heaven in the beginning. So how do we do that? By keeping our mind busy with knowledge points all the time, and also by protecting ourselves from the worldly attractions, that we are able to forget everything about this world, and we constantly remember everything about the new world where we are going. Heaven was so pure that nobody in heaven knows anything about lust, anger, greed, attachment, or ego. It is by becoming body conscious in hell that we slowly become addicted to sensual pleasures and five vices. So how do we become so soul conscious? Through this knowledge. By listening to the Murli daily and churning over the Murli points quite often, our behavior changes slowly. So that was represented in many Mahabharata incidents, and the main thing is when Sri Krishna was insulted publicly by one of his relatives called Shishupal. So he was insulting Sri Krishna so badly, continuously, for around 100 times. During that period, Sri Krishna, without getting hurt even a bit, he was just giving a divine smile. On seeing this, his brother Balram got really surprised and he was asking Sri Krishna, why are you laughing, as if he was praising you? He was not praising you, he was actually abusing you. As per Mahabharat story, Sri Krishna promised Shishupal's mother that he would tolerate around 100 mistakes of Shishupal before he finally punishes him with death. So he was smiling all along, and as soon as he was abusing for the 100th time, he uses his Swadeshan chakra to cut the neck of Shishupal. So that was, as I already mentioned, just a story. It didn't happen for real. If it happened for real, we wouldn't be worshipping someone who kills others. Actually, no deity in heaven would have any kind of weapon, including Swadeshan chakra. So it is actually the weapon of knowledge. What knowledge? The knowledge of this 5,000-year time cycle. The first half of this time cycle called Kalpa was heaven, and the next half is hell. After the completion of hell, it will again be converted to heaven, so that this cycle repeats eternally without stopping forever. So this Swadeshan chakra itself means, Swa means I, the soul. I am the soul, not this body. And Swadershan chakra. So having darshan or vision of the 5,000 years cycle in which the soul takes several births. So in the beginning, the soul was taking the birth of a deity, and it was filled with everything. But by taking several rebirths, it slowly loses its power, that after completion of the first 2,500 years, that it no longer was soul conscious but becomes fully body conscious, thereby become addicted to sensual pleasures, because of which the soul loses everything. So we need to repeat this knowledge over and over again in our mind, which is shown as Sri Krishna rotating this Swadeshan chakra forever. So it actually happens in our mind. As a result, we don't kill anybody external to us, but we kill these 5 demons: lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. In heaven, nobody knows what lust is. So they give birth to the young ones by having the thought of having a baby. And apart from that, they don't even get slightly disturbed by the beauty of his wife. So it is through the power of their thoughts that his wife becomes pregnant. That is the reason Hindus worship those 33 million deities by building temples to them. Heaven was so pure that nobody causes any sort of pain or sorrow to anybody. But that's not the case here. Here, everybody causes sorrow, whether it is parents, children, or spouse, or friends, or even strangers. They all end up hurting us. Thereby, we get angry, we get sexually aroused, we get attached to some person or some belief. Thereby, we become greedy and we become so egoistic. So everything in this world is going to stimulate these 5 vices within us. But if you are able to rotate this Swadharshan chakra, the knowledge about this time cycle, continuously and so fastly that we don't give any chance for the mind to rotate anything wasteful or anything worldly. As a result, after few months or even years, we will find ourselves getting rid of all the worldly attachments, and we feel more and more connected to God constantly, and we'll feel so powerful. How did this magic happen? By killing those 5 vices, by rotating this Swadharshan chakra all the time. So that was represented by that story where Sri Krishna killed Shishupal using Swadharshan chakra, where Swadharshan chakra is this knowledge of this time cycle, and Shishupal is none but our mind that creates negative past things and vicious things. If you are able to kill those thoughts in the very beginning, it means you are rotating this Swadharshan chakra very effectively. As a result, even when we get insulted by someone like Shishupal, we will still be able to have a divine smile on our face, because we have killed all the demons within us, so that we no longer provoked by anything that happened external to us. As a result, we will be constantly peaceful. When we are peaceful, our intellect works very effectively. It can decide between right and wrong just like that, so accurately. And that is the reason even in Mahabharata, when Jarachand strikes fight with Sri Krishna constantly, even though we all know that Sri Krishna is mighty enough to kill Jarachand or to kill anybody, and nobody has the power to win over Sri Krishna decided to leave his place and take his countrymen with him to a new place that was built in the middle of the ocean called Dwaraka. On hearing this decision of Sri Krishna, his brother Balram got really furious that he was saying, the world will blame you as a coward for running out of your country because of Jarachand. And for that, Sri Krishna peacefully replies that it doesn't matter what the world thinks about me, but peace is very important for me and my citizens, so that I don't want that to be disturbed by Jarachand, so I want to head in the direction of peace. So that is the true message conveyed not only in Mahabharata but in all religious scriptures. Unless you know the direct knowledge of God about this time cycle and about the soul and the Supreme Soul God, you can never understand a single word of any religious scripture. So I greet you again with the wishes for Janmashtami and Dahi Handi. I hope you all like this video, and I sincerely request all of you to please share this video with your friends and relatives so that they too get enlightened just like you. Thank you so much.